In a quiet little town nestled in the heart of California, life moved at a predictable pace. The mornings were filled with the chatter of birds, the hum of cars passing by, and the distant sound of school bells ringing. Jefferson High School was the center of activity for teenagers, where cliques formed naturally and everyone seemed to know their place. But one Monday morning, everything changed when a new student walked through the doors. 16-year-old Mia Toretto stepped into the bustling hallway, her presence immediately drawing attention. She wore dark sunglasses that shielded her eyes, giving her an air of mystery, and a sleek leather jacket that made her stand out like a shadow in broad daylight. Her black boots clicked softly against the tiled floor as she navigated the crowded corridor. Students turned their heads, whispering behind cupped hands or nudging each other to get a better look at the newcomer. "Who's that?" murmured Emily, a junior who prided herself on knowing all the gossip before anyone else. "No idea," replied her friend Sarah, craning her neck to catch another glimpse. "But she looks different," and different she was. Unlike most students, who arrived clutching textbooks or nervously adjusting backpack straps, Mia carried herself with an effortless confidence that bordered on intimidating. There was no hesitation in her stride, no fumbling with her schedule. She moved like someone who had been there for years, even though this was her first day. The whispers grew louder as she approached the main office to collect her class timetable. Some speculated that she came from a wealthy family. After all, her clothes looked expensive and her posture screamed privilege. Others whispered about trouble back at her old school in Los Angeles, suggesting she might have transferred because of some scandal. No one knew for sure, but everyone wanted answers. Mia, however, didn't seem interested in satisfying anyone's curiosity. When asked questions by curious classmates during homeroom, she responded politely but briefly, offering just enough information to keep them guessing. "I'm from LA," she said simply when prodded about her previous school. "It's nice here so far." Her aloofness only fueled the rumors further. By second period, half the school believed she was the daughter of a famous actor, while the other half swore she'd been expelled for fighting. None of these stories were true, but they spread like wildfire nonetheless. Meanwhile, Jake and his crew, the self-proclaimed kings of Jefferson High, were growing restless. Jake, a tall, muscular senior with a cocky grin, thrived on being the center of attention. He ruled the hallways with an iron fist, flanked by his loyal followers. Chris, a wiry guy with a knack for sarcasm. Tony, whose brute strength compensated for his lack of wit. And Marcus, the quiet enforcer who rarely spoke but always followed orders. Together they formed a tight-knit group that intimidated nearly everyone in school. But Mia? She hadn't given them a second glance. Not once had she acknowledged their existence, which irritated Jake more than anything. To him, ignoring him was practically an act of rebellion. "She thinks she's better than us?" Jake muttered under his breath during third period history, glaring at the back of Mia's head. She sat 2 rows ahead of him, casually doodling in the margins of her notebook while the teacher droned on about the Civil War. Chris leaned over, smirking. "Maybe she's just clueless. You know, city girls don't understand how things work. Around here." Jake snorted. "Clueless or not, she's got to learn her place. Nobody ignores me and gets away with it." By lunchtime, Jake had decided it was time to make a move. He couldn't let this mysterious new girl waltz into his territory and act like she owned the place. As Mia headed toward the cafeteria, tray in hand, Jake intercepted her near the lockers. His posse trailed behind him, ready to back him up, if needed. Well, if it isn't the new girl," Jake drawled, leaning casually against the wall. His tone was mocking, designed to provoke a reaction. Mia paused mid-step, glancing at him briefly before continuing to walk. "Do you need something?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. Jake straightened up, clearly annoyed that she wasn't, cowering like most people did. "Yeah, actually. I was wondering why you haven't said hi to us yet. You think you're too good for us?" Mia stopped walking again, turning to face him fully. For the first time, she removed her sunglasses, revealing piercing brown eyes that seemed to see right through him. "Not really," she said coolly. "Just busy." Her nonchalance infuriated Jake. How dare she treat him like he was insignificant? Determined to assert his dominance, he took a step closer, invading her personal space. "You should show a little respect," he growled, his voice low. "We run this school." Mia tilted her head slightly, studying him as if he were a bug under a microscope. Then, without warning, Jake raised his hand, intending to deliver a sharp slap to her cheek, a move meant to embarrass her publicly and remind everyone who was in charge. But what happened next shocked everyone within earshot. Before Jake's hand could connect, Mia grabbed his wrist mid-air with lightning speed. Her grip was unyielding, her expression unreadable, but undeniably dangerous. The cafeteria fell silent as dozens of eyes turned toward the scene unfolding near the lockers. Even Jake's friends froze, unsure of what to do. "What did I do to deserve your attention?" Mia asked softly, her voice laced with menace. For the first time in years, Jake felt a flicker of genuine fear. No one dared breathe as the tension hung thick in the air. It was clear that Mia Toretto was not someone to be trifled with, and this was only the beginning. This expanded version adds depth to the setting, characters, and interactions, ensuring the story remains engaging while maintaining its simplicity and intrigue. Let me know if you'd like me to continue expanding. The tension between Mia and Jake had been building since the moment she walked into Jefferson High. By Wednesday, it was clear that Jake wasn't going to let things slide. He couldn't stand being ignored, especially by someone as mysterious and unshakable as Mia. To him, her indifference felt like a direct challenge to his authority. And in Jake's world, challenges were meant to be crushed. That morning, Jake sat with his crew in the cafeteria, nursing a cup of coffee while brainstorming ways to deal with Mia. Chris leaned back in his chair, tossing a crumpled napkin into the air. "She's got guts, I'll give her that," he admitted reluctantly. "But no one says no to us and walks away unscathed." Tony cracked his knuckles, grinning mischievously. "Maybe we should teach her a lesson. Show her who runs this place." Jake smirked, tapping his fingers on the table. "Don't worry, I've got something planned for today. She won't know what hit her." By lunchtime, the plan was set. Jake waited near the lockers where students usually gathered before heading to class. His posse lingered nearby, pretending not to notice as Mia approached, her tray balanced effortlessly in one hand. Her headphones were around her neck and she hummed softly to herself, completely unaware of the trap being laid out for her. As Mia reached for her locker, Jake stepped forward, blocking her path. "Hey, new girl," he sneered, leaning casually against the wall. His tone was mocking, dripping with arrogance. "You think you're too good to say hi?" Mia barely glanced up from her locker. "Not really," she replied coolly, pulling out a textbook and shoving it into her bag. Her movements were deliberate, unhurried, as though Jake's presence didn't faze her in the slightest. Jake frowned, taken aback by her lack of reaction. Most students would have stuttered or stammered under his glare, but Mia acted like he was just another face in the crowd. It infuriated him. "Well, maybe we need to teach you some manners around here," he said, his voice rising slightly. Before anyone could react, Jake lunged forward, raising his hand to deliver a sharp slap to Mia's cheek. It was meant to humiliate her, to remind everyone watching that crossing Jake came with consequences. But what happened next left the entire hallway stunned. With lightning-fast reflexes, Mia caught Jake's wrist mid-air. Her grip was firm, almost painful, and her expression remained calm. Too calm. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. The chatter in the hallway died down as dozens of eyes turned toward the scene unfolding near the lockers. Even Jake's friends froze, unsure of whether to intervene or stay silent. "What did I do to deserve your attention?" Mia asked softly, her voice laced with menace. Her piercing gaze locked onto Jake's, and for the first time he felt a flicker of genuine fear. Jake tried to pull his arm free, but Mia's hold was unyielding. "Let go of me," he snapped, his voice cracking slightly. The cockiness that had defined him moments ago was gone, replaced by uncertainty. Mia tilted her head slightly, studying him as if he were a bug under a microscope. Then, without saying another word, she released his wrist and stepped back. The movement was smooth, controlled, leaving Jake rubbing his sore arm and glaring at her. For a few seconds, no one spoke. The silence was deafening, broken only by the distant sound of footsteps echoing down the hallway. Finally, Jake muttered something under his breath and stormed off, his friends scrambling to catch up. As they disappeared around the corner, the whispers began. "Did you see that? She stopped him like it was nothing. She's got to be hiding something. No one's that tough without practice. Maybe she's secretly a spy or something." By the end of the day, the story of Mia's confrontation with Jake had spread like wildfire. Everyone wanted to know more about the mysterious new girl who had single-handedly disarmed the school's biggest bully. Speculation ran rampant, and theories ranged from wild to downright absurd. Some students claimed Mia was a martial arts champion, trained since childhood to defend herself. Others whispered that she might have ties to organized crime, explaining her fearless demeanor. A few even joked that she was an undercover superhero sent to protect the school from evil forces. Despite the rumors, Mia remained unfazed. During gym class, she went about her routine as usual, climbing the rope with ease and acing every drill the teacher assigned. When curious classmates approached her after practice, she simply shrugged off their questions with a polite smile. "I'm just here to learn, same as everyone else," she said, tying her hair into a ponytail. But curiosity eventually got the better of Sarah, a shy sophomore who admired Mia from afar. Summoning her courage, Sarah approached Mia as she packed up her belongings in the locker room. Hi," Sarah began hesitantly, clutching her towel nervously. "I just wanted to say, you handled Jake pretty well earlier." Mia paused, glancing over her shoulder. "Thanks," she replied simply. Zipping up her bag, Sarah hesitated, debating whether to ask the question burning in her mind. Finally, she blurted out, "How did you know what to do? I mean, stopping him like that, that's not something everyone can do." For a moment, Mia didn't respond. She slung her bag over her shoulder and turned to face Sarah fully. Then, with a small smile, she pulled out her phone and showed Sarah a photo of herself, standing next to none other than Vin Diesel, the global action star known for his roles in blockbuster movies. "My grandfather taught me everything I know," Mia explained casually, as if revealing such a bombshell was no big deal. "And trust me, messing with me isn't worth it." Sarah's jaw dropped and her eyes widened in disbelief. "Wait, Vin Diesel is your grandfather?" Mia nodded, chuckling at Sarah's reaction. "Yeah, he always said strength isn't about showing off, it's about knowing when to use it." Guess I took that advice to heart. By the time the final bell rang, the entire school knew the truth. Mia Toretto wasn't just any new student. She was Vin Diesel's granddaughter, and her confidence wasn't an act. It was ingrained in her DNA. The revelation sent shockwaves through Jefferson High, changing the way everyone viewed her. Jake and his crew avoided Mia like the plague, terrified of provoking her again. Other students, however, started treating her differently, not out of fear but out of respect. They saw her as someone who stood her ground, someone who refused to bow to intimidation. And slowly but surely, Mia began to carve out her own place in the school, earning admiration for more than just her famous last name. This expanded version dives deeper into the dynamics between Mia and Jake, explores the reactions of the student body, and adds emotional layers to make the story more engaging. Let me know if you'd like further adjustments or expansions. By Thursday morning, the entire school was buzzing with excitement or perhaps fear over Mia Toretto. The revelation that she was Vin Diesel's granddaughter had spread like wildfire, and it seemed as though everyone had an opinion about her. Some students were in awe of her famous lineage, while others were intimidated by the idea of crossing someone with such a powerful family connection. But regardless of how people felt, one thing was clear. Mia had become the most talked about person at Jefferson High. Jake and his crew, however, were nowhere to be seen during first period. They avoided the hallways where Mia usually passed, through and even skipped their usual spots in the cafeteria during lunch. It wasn't hard to guess why. They were terrified of provoking her again after what had happened the day before. Jake's attempt to slap her cheek had backfired spectacularly. leaving him humiliated in front of the entire student body. Now he couldn't risk another confrontation, not when everyone knew who Mia really was. But while Jake and his friends retreated into the shadows, other students began approaching Mia with newfound curiosity and respect. Word had gotten around that she wasn't just some spoiled celebrity relative. She carried herself with quiet confidence, never flaunting her famous grandfather or using his name to intimidate others. In fact, Mia seemed completely unfazed by all the attention. She went about her day as usual, attending classes, participating in discussions, and keeping to herself during breaks. During gym class later that afternoon, something unexpected happened that would further cement Mia's reputation at Jefferson High. The activity for the day was dodgeball, a chaotic game that often brought out the worst in people. As the teams were divided, Mia found herself grouped with a mix of underclassmen and quieter students who rarely stood out in competitive settings. On the opposing side were some of the more aggressive players, including Ethan, a shy freshman who always seemed to get targeted because of his size. As the game began, balls flew across the court, and shouts filled the air. One particularly rowdy senior named Brandon, a friend of Jake's, zeroed in on Ethan almost immediately. With a smirk, Brandon hurled a ball directly at Ethan's chest, knocking him off balance. The impact sent Ethan stumbling backward, and he landed awkwardly on the floor, wincing in pain. "Watch it," Brandon called out mockingly, laughing along with his teammates. "You've got to move faster than that if you want to survive." Ethan scrambled to his feet, his face flushed with embarrassment. He muttered an apology, though no one had asked for one, and quickly moved to the sidelines, trying to make himself invisible. But before Brandon could gloat any further, a voice cut through the noise. "Leave him alone." Everyone turned to see Mia standing near the center of the court, her arms crossed over her chest. Her expression was calm but firm, and there was no mistaking the authority in her tone. For a moment the gym fell silent, the only sound coming from the squeak of sneakers on the polished floor. Brandon blinked, caught off guard. "What's it to you?" he shot back, though his bravado faltered slightly under Mia's steady gaze. "It's not okay to pick on someone smaller than you," Mia replied evenly, taking a step closer. "If you've got a problem, take it up with me." The challenge hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Brandon glanced at his teammates, silently pleading for backup, but none of them stepped forward. Even they weren't willing to risk tangling with Mia, not after what had happened with Jake. Reluctantly, Brandon shrugged and backed down, muttering something about how it wasn't worth the trouble. With the tension diffused, Mia walked over to Ethan, who was still standing awkwardly near the sidelines. She handed him a towel and gave him a reassuring smile. "You don't let people treat you like that," she said gently. "Stand up for yourself, or find someone who will." Ethan nodded, gratitude shining in his eyes. Though he didn't say much, it was obvious that Mia's words had made an impact. From that moment on, he held his head a little higher, feeling braver than he ever had before. Word of Mia's intervention spread quickly, earning her even more admiration from her peers. Students who had once been wary of her now saw her as a protector, someone who used her strength and influence to stand up for those who couldn't defend themselves. Over the next few days, several underclassmen approached her to thank her for setting an example. Others confided in her about their own struggles with bullying, seeking advice on how to handle difficult situations. Mia listened patiently, offering guidance without judgment. She encouraged them to speak up when they felt wronged and reminded them that true strength came from kindness and integrity, not aggression or intimidation. "Being strong doesn't mean you have to fight every battle," she told them. "Sometimes it means knowing when to walk away. But if someone crosses the line, don't hesitate to stand your ground." Her message resonated deeply with many students, especially those who had grown tired of feeling powerless against bullies like Jake and his crew. Slowly but surely, the atmosphere at Jefferson High began to shift. People started speaking up more, refusing to tolerate disrespectful behavior. Even teachers noticed the change, commenting on how much more positive and supportive the school environment had become. Of course, not everyone was thrilled about Mia's growing influence. Jake, in particular, seethed with frustration. He hated seeing her gain popularity while he and his friends faded into the background. Every time he passed her in the hallway, he clenched his fists, itching to reclaim his dominance. But deep down, he knew better than to try anything, not when everyone knew exactly who she was. By the end of the week, Mia had established herself as a force to be reckoned with, not because she sought power, but because she inspired others to believe in themselves. She didn't need to throw her weight around or rely on her famous last name to earn respect. Instead, she led by example, showing compassion and courage in equal measure. And yet, despite all the attention and admiration, Mia remained humble. She understood that being Vin Diesel's granddaughter came with certain privileges, but she also knew that her actions spoke louder than her name. To her, it wasn't about living up to anyone else's expectations. It was about staying true to herself and making a difference in whatever way she could. As Friday rolled around, Mia reflected on everything that had happened since her arrival at Jefferson High. She had come to this small town hoping for a fresh start, unaware of how much her presence would impact those around her. In just a matter of days, she had gone from being the mysterious new girl to a symbol of hope and resilience. But Mia knew that her journey was far from over. There would always be challenges ahead, both big and small. And though she couldn't predict what the future held, one thing was certain. Wherever life took her, she would continue to carry the lessons her grandfather had taught her. Lessons about strength, humility, and the importance of standing up for what was right. This expanded version delves deeper into Mia's interactions with other students, highlighting her role as a protector and mentor. It also explores the ripple effect of her actions on the school's culture, making the story more engaging and meaningful. Let me know if you'd like further adjustments. By the time Friday morning arrived, Jefferson High School felt like a different place. The air buzzed with energy. Not the usual chaotic chatter of students rushing to class, but a quieter, more hopeful kind of excitement. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable at first, but if you paid close attention, you could see it in the way people carried themselves. Students walked taller, their shoulders squared and heads held high. Conversations were less about gossip and more about encouragement. Even the teachers seemed to notice a shift, commenting on how much quieter the hallways had become during passing periods. At the center of this transformation was Mia Toretto. She hadn't set out to change anything when she transferred to Jefferson High. All she wanted was a fresh start, a chance to escape the spotlight that came with being Vin Diesel's granddaughter and live a normal life for once. But sometimes, normalcy isn't an option when you're someone who naturally commands respect. And Mia, well, she didn't just command respect, she inspired it. The ripple effect of her actions over the past week was undeniable. After standing up to Jake and defending Ethan during gym class, Mia had unknowingly sparked something within the student body. People began to realize that they didn't have to tolerate bullying or intimidation anymore. They saw how Mia handled herself, calm, confident, and always ready to step in when someone needed help, and decided they wanted to be like her. Take Sarah, for example. The shy sophomore who had approached Mia earlier in the week now found herself speaking up in class discussions, her voice steady despite the nerves fluttering in her chest. Or consider Ethan, the freshman who had been knocked down during dodgeball. He no longer shrank away from his peers, instead choosing to sit with new friends at lunch and even cracking jokes that earned him laughter rather than pity. Mia noticed these changes too, though she never took credit for them. To her, it wasn't about being a hero. It was about doing what was right. When classmates thanked her for inspiring them, she simply smiled and said, "You did the hard part. I just gave you a nudge." But not everyone was thrilled about the newfound positivity sweeping through the school. Jake and his crew in particular struggled to adjust to their diminished status. Without their usual antics to keep them entertained, they grew restless, searching for ways to reclaim their dominance. Unfortunately for them, their attempts only made things worse. During biology class on Friday afternoon, disaster struck, or at least, that's how Jake saw it. A clumsy freshman named Marcus, not to be confused with Jake's friend of the same name, accidentally spilled a tray of chemicals onto Jake's backpack while cleaning up after an experiment. The liquid soaked through the fabric, leaving behind a dark stain that smelled faintly of sulfur. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Jake barked, snatching his ruined bag off the table. His face turned red with anger as he glared at Marcus, who stood frozen in terror. I'm so sorry," Marcus stammered, tears welling up in his eyes. "I didn't mean to. I swear." Jake wasn't listening. "This was my favorite backpack." "You idiot," he snapped, shoving Marcus hard enough to send him stumbling backward. The boy landed on the floor with a thud, his glasses askew and books scattering across the linoleum tiles. The rest of the class fell silent, watching nervously, as Jake loomed over Marcus, fists clenched. For a moment it seemed like history might repeat itself. Another bully asserting his power, another victim left humiliated and helpless. But before Jake could say or do anything else, a familiar voice cut through the tension. "That's enough." Everyone turned to see Mia standing near the doorway, her arms crossed over her chest. Her expression was calm, but there was no mistaking the steely resolve in her eyes. She strode toward Jake, her boots clicking softly against the floor, until she stood directly between him and Marcus. "Leave him alone," she said firmly, her voice carrying an authority that brooked no argument. Jake sneered, trying to mask his unease with bravado. "Stay out of this, Mia. This has nothing to do with you." "It does when you're picking on someone half your size," Mia shot back, her tone sharp enough to cut glass. "If you've got a problem, take it up with me. Otherwise, walk away." For a moment, Jake hesitated. His pride screamed at him to push back, to prove that he wasn't afraid of her. But then he glanced around the room, meeting the wide-eyed stares of his classmates. None of them looked impressed. In fact, most of them seemed disgusted by his behavior. Even his own friends avoided making eye contact, clearly unwilling to back him up this time. With a muttered curse, Jake grabbed his stained backpack and stormed out of the classroom, slamming the door behind him. His posse scrambled to follow, leaving an awkward silence in their wake. Mia crouched down beside Marcus, helping him gather his scattered belongings. "Are you okay?" she asked gently, handing him his glasses. Marcus nodded, wiping his eyes with the sleeve of his hoodie. Yeah, thanks. You don't let people treat you like that," Mia reminded him, echoing the advice she'd given Ethan earlier in the week. "Stand up for yourself, or find someone who will." As the bell rang, signaling the end of class, Mia helped Marcus to his feet and sent him on his way with a reassuring pat on the shoulder. By the time she reached her next class, word of her latest intervention had already spread. Students whispered excitedly about how she'd confronted Jake yet again, marveling at her unwavering courage. Over the weekend, the story continued to circulate, reaching even those who hadn't witnessed it firsthand. By Monday morning, Jake and his crew were nowhere to be seen. They'd apparently decided to lay low for a while, perhaps realizing that their reign of terror was officially over. Meanwhile, Mia's influence only grew stronger. Students began approaching her not just for advice, but also to share stories of their own victories. One girl recounted how she finally stood up to her older brother, who had been teasing her relentlessly. Another boy described how he confronted a neighbor who had been dumping trash in their shared driveway. Each story was different, but they all shared a common thread. Mia had inspired them to believe in themselves. Even the teachers started noticing the change. Mr. Anderson, the biology teacher, pulled Mia aside after class one day to thank her for stepping in during the incident with Marcus. "You've done more for this school in a week than I've seen in years," he admitted, shaking his head in amazement. "Keep doing what you're doing, Mia. You're making a real difference." Mia smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. She hadn't expected any of this when she first arrived at Jefferson High. All she wanted was to blend in, to escape the constant pressure of living under her famous grandfather's shadow. But now she realized that maybe blending in wasn't such a bad thing after all, not if it meant she could use her experiences to help others. As the weeks went by, Mia continued to lead by example, showing compassion and courage in equal measure. She joined the school's peer mentoring program, offering guidance to younger students struggling with confidence issues. She organized workshops on conflict resolution, teaching her classmates practical skills for handling difficult situations. And whenever someone needed support, whether it was dealing with bullies or navigating personal challenges, Mia was there, steady, reliable, and always willing to listen. Her efforts didn't go unnoticed. By the end of the semester, Mia had become a beloved figure at Jefferson High, respected not because of her famous last name, but because of the person she chose to be every single day. She proved that true strength wasn't about physical power or intimidating others. It was about lifting people up, empowering them to stand tall and face the world with courage. And as Mia reflected on everything she had accomplished, she couldn't help but feel proud, not just of herself but of the entire school community. Together they had transformed Jefferson High into a place where kindness triumphed over cruelty, where empathy outweighed ego, and where everyone had the opportunity to shine. This expanded version emphasizes Mia's role as a mentor and leader, showcasing how her actions inspire lasting change in the school environment. Let me know if you'd like further refinements. As the school year drew to a close, Jefferson High School was almost unrecognizable from the place Mia Toretto had first walked into just months earlier. The hallways, once filled with whispers of fear and tension, now buzzed with laughter and camaraderie. Students who had once tiptoed around Jake and his crew now greeted each other warmly, their shoulders relaxed and their smiles genuine. It wasn't an overnight transformation. It had taken time, effort, and a lot of courage, but there was no denying that something remarkable had happened. At the heart of this change was Mia. She hadn't set out to become a leader or a role model. All she wanted was to blend in, to escape the constant spotlight that came with being Vin Diesel's granddaughter. But sometimes, blending in isn't possible when you're someone who naturally stands out, not because of your name, but because of your actions. And Mia's actions spoke louder than any words ever could. By the final week of school, Mia had cemented her reputation as someone who cared deeply about others. Whether it was helping a struggling student understand a difficult math problem, mediating conflicts between classmates, or simply sitting with someone who felt lonely at lunch, she made it clear that she was there for everyone. Her kindness wasn't performative. It was authentic, coming from a place of genuine empathy and understanding. That authenticity resonated with people, making them want to be better versions of themselves. On the last day of classes, the entire school gathered in the auditorium for the annual end-of-year assembly. As Principal Carter took the stage to deliver his closing remarks, he paused briefly, scanning the crowd with a proud smile. "This year has been special," he began, adjusting his glasses. "We've seen incredible growth, not just academically, but socially and emotionally, and much of that growth can be attributed to one person." The room erupted into applause before he even finished his sentence. Everyone knew exactly who he was talking about. Mia sat near the back of the auditorium, trying to shrink into her seat, as dozens of eyes turned toward her. She wasn't comfortable with all the attention, but she couldn't deny the warmth spreading through her chest as her classmates cheered. "Mia Toretto," Principal Carter continued, "has shown us what true strength looks like. She's taught us that standing up for ourselves doesn't mean pushing others down, and that standing up for others is one of the bravest things we can do. So let's give her another round of applause for reminding us how to treat each other with respect and kindness." Mia stood reluctantly as the clapping grew louder, her face flushed with embarrassment. She waved awkwardly, signaling for everyone to stop, but they didn't. If anything, the cheering only intensified. Finally, Principal Carter stepped in, raising his hands to quiet the crowd. All right, he said with a chuckle. "Let's save some energy for graduation next week." He glanced at Mia again, his expression softening. "Thank you, Mia. You've made a real difference here." When the assembly ended, students swarmed Mia, eager to thank her personally. Some hugged her tightly, while others handed her notes scribbled with heartfelt messages. One boy pressed a folded origami crane into her palm, saying, "This is for good luck. I hope you keep inspiring people wherever you go." Mia accepted their gratitude graciously, though she still insisted she hadn't done anything extraordinary. I just did what anyone would have done, she told them repeatedly. But deep down, she knew that wasn't entirely true. Not everyone would have stepped in when Jake tried to slap her cheek. Not everyone would have defended Ethan during dodgeball or confronted Jake again over Marcus. And not everyone would have used their influence to lift others up instead of tearing them down. Later that afternoon, Mia found herself standing outside the school building, looking out at the sprawling lawn where students were celebrating the end of exams. Music played faintly in the background and clusters of friends laughed and snapped photos together. It was a bittersweet moment, joyful yet tinged with sadness, knowing that many of these faces would soon scatter to different schools, cities, or paths in life. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, pulling her out of her thoughts. She pulled it out and smiled when she saw the text notification. It was from her grandfather. "How's my favorite grandkid doing? Still kicking butt?" Mia chuckled, typing back quickly. "Just following in your footsteps, Grandpa." A few seconds later, another message popped up. "Knew you'd make me proud. Tell me everything." She hesitated, glancing back at the lively scene behind her. How could she possibly sum up everything that had happened since she arrived at Jefferson High? From standing up to bullies to empowering her peers, every moment had been part of a journey she hadn't anticipated but wouldn't trade for anything. Finally, she typed a simple response. "I'll tell you all about it when I see you. Love, you." As she tucked her phone back into her pocket, she noticed Sarah approaching cautiously, holding a small gift wrapped in shiny blue paper. "Hey, Mia," Sarah said shyly, holding it out. "This is for you. To say thanks for everything." Mia took the gift, touched by the gesture. "You didn't have to do this," she said softly, unwrapping it carefully. Inside was a framed photo collage, a mix of candid shots from throughout the school year. There was Mia laughing with Sarah during gym class, posing with Ethan after dodgeball, and even one of her standing confidently near the lockers on the day she stopped Jake's slap. In the center of the collage was a handwritten note. "Because you showed us how to be brave." Tears pricked at the corners of Mia's eyes as she looked at it. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "This means so much." Sarah beamed, clearly relieved that Mia liked it. "We're gonna miss you," she admitted, "but I know you'll keep doing amazing things wherever you go." "I'll miss you guys too," Mia replied honestly. "But hey, maybe our paths will cross again someday." With that, Mia turned and headed toward the parking lot, where her sleek black muscle car, the one gifted to her by her grandfather, was waiting. She climbed inside, running her fingers over the smooth leather steering wheel as memories flooded her mind. This car wasn't just a gift. It was a symbol of her family's legacy, a legacy of resilience, determination, and unwavering courage. As she drove away from Jefferson High for the last time, Mia reflected on everything she had learned during her time there. She had come seeking anonymity, hoping to escape the pressures of fame. Instead, she had discovered something far more valuable: the power of leading by example. By staying true to herself and using her strengths to help others, she had transformed not only her own life, but also the lives of countless others. And while she knew that challenges lay ahead, new schools, new friendships, new adventures, she felt ready to face them head on. After all, she carried more than just her grandfather's name. She carried his values, his lessons, and his belief that true strength comes from kindness and integrity. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden rays across the road, Mia smiled to herself. Whatever the future held, she was prepared to embrace it with open arms and maybe inspire a few more people along the way. This expanded version ties up loose ends, highlights Mia's emotional journey, and reinforces the themes of kindness, courage, and legacy. Let me know if you'd like further tweaks